السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما. Welcome new and old listeners to Ruh Revival, a podcast initiative led by McMaster Muslim Student Association. Our podcast aims to deliver means of Islamic revival and engagement for university students at McMaster and beyond, discussing the important and difficult topics for young Muslims. As the name suggests, Ruh means soul in Arabic, and so our podcast aspires to revive the soul, learning from speakers of diverse Islamic knowledge. The theme of our episode today will touch on navigating as a student of knowledge in Islam, navigating spirituality and faith, and looking into Muslim representations in the media and in public settings. Our speakers for today are Sister Sarah Yaqoob and Sister Fareeda Baruwa. Sister Sarah is a motivational speaker and Islamic educator, currently completing her bachelor's in Islamic education at McMaster University. She holds an honors degree in human behavior from McMaster University with a concurrent certificate in biomedical sciences. She is a former humanitarian worker at Human Concern International, establishing their online brand and influencer engagement. She currently does public speaking and mentorship for the sisterhood in the GTA. Through her social media platforms, she actively promotes humanitarian work, Islamic education, and personal development. She has previously served as MSA Sisters VP and has continued her community engagement by hosting various local fundraisers, halakas, and other social events in the GTA. Sister Fareeda is a McMaster University alumni where she earned her bachelor's degree in commerce with a minor in justice, law, and order. Her passions around representation, advocacy, and equity, diversity, inclusion propelled her to hold several leadership positions within various student clubs on campus. Currently, she works as a human resources coordinator at Islamic Relief Canada. Outside of her work, she's a poet, a published author of her poetry book Seed to Bloom, a writer with the Digital Sisterhood podcast, and a seeker of knowledge. She has previously served as MSA Community Development Director, and her motivation is to make a positive difference in the world and in the lives of others, one person at a time. Jazakallah, sisters, for coming onto our podcast. Let's begin with you, Sister Sarah, on your journey on your path to scholarship. What inspired you to become an Islamic scholar? How did you begin your journey, and what problems did you overcome along the way?
It's a very long story, but first of all, disclaimer, I'm not a scholar yet. How it all started was actually here at McMaster. Alhamdulillah, fun fact, Fareeda and I, we both were the executive directors for 2020 and 2021, I believe, right? But it started off, growing up, alhamdulillah, I came from a practicing family, and the idea of, always learning was in my head, because they put it in my mind. They're like, you always have to grow, you always have to learn, you always have to study the deen. It will never stop. And so growing up, I just had that idea of, I love learning and I want to learn. And, I used to watch those YouTube videos by Shaykh Suleiman. I used to Yasser Qadi videos, all of the beautiful videos that you see on YouTube. But when I got into my role as Vice President Sisters, a lot of sisters would come to me with advice. And it was very, very, very deep advice, sometimes even mental health, suicidal thoughts, abuse, and everything like that. And I was like, whoa, first of all, why are you coming to me? I'm not an expert. But I took that as a huge amana and a discipline. I was like, okay, you know what? If I'm going to lead, I need to have knowledge. I need to learn from myself, to better myself, and to, grow as a person. And then whatever I'm telling someone, I'm not just saying out of a whim, I know exactly the advice that I'm giving. And so the challenges that I technically faced was where do I go? How do I seek this knowledge, right? Because one person said, oh, don't go there. The other one said, oh, that institute is fine. You could do this, you could do that. Everyone came from very different backgrounds, and you'll see why some scholars are they're all very different and specialized. So I was like, but what do I study? What do I feel comfortable with? And I spoke to so many people, Shaykh Hussam's wife, the brothers from the MSA, some sisters, everyone giving me different opinions. But one struggle that I had was I couldn't find a mentor, female mentor. There's, mashallah, many shuyukh out there. There's many brothers out there, especially in the MSA, but there was no, mentor, a woman mentor that I could go to that was within the path. So a lot of the advice that I got was from brothers, which was amazing, alhamdulillah, but I really wanted to talk to a woman, and I couldn't really find any. I remember some of the brothers were also trying to look, but that motivated me to be like, you know what? It's okay, I'll be that. Or we'll just find someone, I'll find someone eventually. So I got suggested McMaster University by Shaykh Hussam, Hisham, and all these brothers. I give credit to them because they are the ones that really pushed me to it. And Shaykh Hussam's wife as well. And they were like, just do it. I had so many questions because my biggest fear was if I seek knowledge and I don't apply it, that's so scary. Once you have the knowledge, then you know what is right and wrong. Mm-hmm. So alhamdulillah, I took that step, and the journey has been beautiful. And there's a hadith where they say whoever seeks knowledge in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he makes it easy for them. He opens the doors. But that's essentially why how I got into it. I think it was very natural. I never imagined it. I thought I was going to be a pharmacist. That didn't work out. But alhamdulillah, it happened very naturally, and it was. I truly always say it was by Allah. Allah willed for it, and it happened so naturally within the leadership position that I was in and continuously am. I think it's very important for any Muslims to gain knowledge, especially if you're in the leadership position. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, subhanAllah, you became your own role model. Yeah, you were looking for a role model, but then you became her, essentially, maybe.
I guess.
Inshallah.
I don't really think I'm a role model, but
yeah.
I'm very, I would say, hard on myself.
Mm-hmm.
I really hold myself to a high, my standards for myself are very high.
Mm-hmm.
It's good, and then it's also bad at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure many of us can relate to that. But mashallah, a lot of my role models, which stem from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A lot of my female role models are from there and after. But there are many that I got to meet as I got more into work and everything, so I got to see beautiful women out there. Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
And any advice you would give to young Muslim students who also want to pursue the path of Islamic education?
First question, why? You have to ask yourself why you want to do it, because the thing is, I feel like we live in a society where everyone loves the idea of being known, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone loves a scholar, you get to fly out, you get a hotel booked, and you have to ask yourself, why do you want to study? And it has to be for yourself. Mm-hmm. It can't be because, I have so much knowledge, I'll tell everybody will love me. You can't have that mentality, or else it kind of skews it a little bit. So ask yourself, why do I want to do it? And if it's for the sake of Allah and for yourself, and then I would say, obviously a brother can reach out to many brothers out there, and I would say if a sister wants to, she can always reach out to me. But look into different institutes, and there's no need to be your aim shouldn't be I need to be a leader. It's rather how can I be the best Muslim that I can be? Whatever institute you join, choose what resonates with you, choose what brings you closer to Allah, right? Whatever that may be. And there's so many institutes out there that have beautiful, beautiful courses. Just start somewhere, and that will inshallah lead you to wherever you want to go. But if you want to be a scholar, just know it's a really big responsibility, and ask yourself, why do you want to do it? Mm-hmm. That would be my advice.
We know that there's the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, all actions are judged by their underlying intentions, or the reward of deeds depends upon their intentions.
Exactly.
So intentions are a big thing.
100%. And another thing is we should remember that the Sahabas would run away from being leaders, right? They would run away. Why? Because the accountability is there, right? The responsibility is very, very huge. And your ikhlaq matters, your intention, the way you deal with things, how you deal with things. So they would run away from it. Our generation runs toward it, right? They're like, they see a leadership position, they're like, oh wow, I want to be there, I want to get all this, and that. But I think we Muslims have forgotten that the accountability of being a Muslim leader is very, very huge. And we will be asked on the day of judgment why. The first thing is like, why did you do that, right? And the moment, if Allah says, no, it wasn't for me, that it's scary. So even for me, whenever I'm on social media, there'll be days where I post a lot, and the days where I disappear because I just don't, my intentions, I just try to hold myself accountable. If I'm not feeling it, then why am I posting? Is it for the likes? Is it for the views? So you just have to really, everyone should know their own fitna, and their own sense of self-awareness is very important. But I feel like as Muslims, we should want to make the world a better place. We should want to put an impact, but that doesn't require you to be like a top person. Yeah. Just like work on yourself, and if Allah wills for you to be among the scholars, then that's a really big responsibility, and you always keep yourself accountable for that.
Yes. Jazakallah khair for sharing. Now, touching on the role of faith, how does either one of you can say, how does your faith impact your attitude to work and studies?
Sure, I can
go for it.
So I would say for me that Islam has always honestly been the blueprint. Like it always is that guiding compass that guides me throughout my life to know what I need to do at a certain time, at a certain place, and then why I'm doing it. I never feel like I'm doing something just because. Like there's actually a reason why we pray. There's actually a reason why we fast. There's a reason why we do certain things. And that has always really been that compass for me throughout my life. And that blueprint as well, because it lays out, how you're supposed to do certain things. You never have to second guess. You never have to doubt anything. I would say when it comes to work and school for me, Islam really just kind of helps me to be principled. That like I take everything with, like, we're talking about ihsan, doing things with excellence. Because that having that, opportunity to go to school, to go to work is a privilege. It's not a right, right? A lot of people around the world don't have that. And Allah has given you this gift. So what are you doing with it? Are you going to just, squander it and not do it to the best of your ability? Or are you going to try to put your best foot forward and then let Allah crown your efforts with success? That's what I always keep in the back of my mind when it comes to how I approach work in school, because, that blueprint is there for you, but what are you doing with it? Are you taking it into your own hands to chart your own path? And are you doing those things with excellence? Another thing I would also say is when it comes to dealing with non-Muslims, for example, especially with in a school setting, we live in a Western world, even at work as well, you're going to have non-Muslim coworkers, non-Muslim professors, group mates, all that kind of stuff. TAs, really, really. And it's like, when you interact with them, you really have to keep in the back of your mind, especially if you're a visible Muslim or someone that they know is a Muslim, what perception are they going to start forming about you, right? And it's really important that, you're, interact with them to the best of your ability, not because you want to look good or because you want to not be, you want to be disingenuous to who you truly are, but because it's good practice to be good.
Yes.
And we've been called to be the best of ourselves to people. And not just non-Muslims, to our own Muslim community as well, right? Like it's really important to use what we've been taught in Islam within every space that we occupy. And kind of going back to school, an example that I can give when it comes to Islam is that Islam is also a source of comfort for me. That when there's a lot of things that, are going wrong or not, things that like are not going the way that I expect it to go, I'm able to fall back and then rely on Islam. And then I can look at it and be like, oh, this is happening because of this. And even if I don't have an answer, I know that Allah has the answer. And I have to be willing and able to accept that, the situation is not going right for me. That's okay. Because Allah is the one who's decreed it to go that way. And it's really hard to do that.
Of course.
It's really hard to be like, okay, I don't have the answers, but Allah has the answers, and let me be okay with it. Like, if I can give a more even specific example, I remember this was either my first semester of my last year or my last semester of my last year. I had done really bad on a midterm. probably the worst I'd ever gotten in my entire undergrad. Everyone has bad midterms, right? But I felt that for me, I always put in 110% whatever I do. So to put in that much effort and not get the results was like, what's going on? There's that like cognitive dissonance happening with me. And so I had to, like, I remember in Mills, I was literally like, this is so lame, but I was like crying because I was just like, why am I feel getting such a bad mark for something I put in so much effort into? But subhanAllah, it's like, you know, Allah is the one who crowns your efforts with success, not you. Like that result is not in your hands. There's only so much that you can do, and then Allah takes care of the rest, right? And I had to really be okay with that. And, you know, have that trust that everything's going to turn out okay. And alhamdulillah, it did. Like, I graduated, right? I made it out. But it's like having that understanding of Islam really kind of keeps you grounded and connected, that when things don't go well, you know, it's okay. Because either there's a reason behind it, or if there's not a reason, you trust the one who made it happen in the first place. I'll say Islam has always been that blueprint for me and that guiding point. So, yeah. Alhamdulillah, first time.
And maybe you can even touch on your personal development and how your knowledge of Islam changed over time and what events perhaps contributed to that evolution.
Yeah, for sure. I would say for me, COVID was a really monumental period of time. I know COVID feels like so long ago, but it really wasn't, right? I remember when that first COVID happened and like that first year of 2020, and we were all like in isolation and lockdown. You know, I was in my student house away from friends and family. Didn't really have anyone around me. And a lot of beautiful stuff came out of that isolation for me, I would say. Like I was able to really get closer to Islam and closer to Allah and really develop my spiritual and emotional connection with Allah because I was forced to. I was forced to be at home. I was forced to reflect. And, you know, we have so many examples of stories of prophets and, you know, people in Islam who, you know, are in isolation and they're able to like have these introspective, you know, thoughts and perspectives and conversations with Allah because they're able to focus and there's no outside distractions around them. Right. And I felt like that was the case for me with COVID, that I was really able to take a deep dive into my religion and my faith and really understand why we do certain things. Because before, you know, you're praying, you're fasting, you're doing all those things, but why?
Beautiful.
And then why do I want to do it? Like, yeah, Allah tells me, but why do I want to follow that? Right. And like, that's when I really started wanting to get into more tafsir and really understanding the meanings behind what I'm reading. Because you just pick it up, read it, but you don't actually understand what it means. And you have to get knowledge for that. You have to see how other people who are more knowledge and learned, how they interpret those verses for you to understand it, take it, and apply it. Because really, that's what we should be doing when we read the Quran. Understand it, take it, and apply it. And I would say as well, that also sparked my interest to want to learn Arabic. Because I was like, I need to translate on my own. I don't want to be reading English translations. I want to actually understand it, even when I'm praying, right? Like, I want to know the meaning of what I'm saying, because it really builds that khushu and that focus. And it builds that connection a lot more when you're praying as well. So I'd say like all of that during COVID was really influential and important for me in my spiritual journey. And a lot of resources that I kind of used for that was from, you know, you mentioned Yaqeen Institute. That's when I first discovered them. And their Quran 30 for 30 series that started during COVID. Even their other Ramadan series that they would do, like the Angel series, the one on Prophet Muhammad, the one they had last Ramadan, Why Me, right? Like, they're always so impactful. And it really just makes you reflect a lot more. And also Al-Maghrib Institute's 99 Names of Allah series, I would say was also really helpful for me in developing that spiritual and emotional connection. And that honestly wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't in isolation, if I wasn't forced to reflect and think about, you know, Islam in that way.
Yeah. So I feel like COVID-19 gave a lot of people a lot of time to reflect on themselves, who they are, what their purpose is, where they are, and regardless of where their spirituality lay. And so thank you for sharing your personal insights with us. Now shifting gears a little bit in terms of staying grounded, what strategies have helped you guys remain true to your Islamic principles when pursuing advocacy and activism?
Okay, I guess I'll take this one. First of all, I just want to say what Fareeda said was so beautiful. And I was here I agree 100%. And it's, honestly, everything that she says kind of falls into this as well. Like, I've honestly, Islam is a lifestyle, right? Islam is not just a religion; it's our life.
It's
Literally,
deen.
it's a lifestyle. Everything we do is based off of what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has told us to do. The Quran and the Sunnah, it's our lifestyle. So we shape our world based off of what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has told us to do. And that takes, again, it's not easy. It's very hard because you have your desires, you have stuff you want to fulfill. So staying grounded, I follow these three principles personally. Number one, if whatever I do in this situation, will Allah be pleased with it? I ask myself that. Number two, what would the Prophet ﷺ do in this situation? And number three, if he were with me right now, or like if I was around this company, would I feel embarrassed doing that? So that comes into advocacy too, or just being like an activist or any type of leader. I believe, is that the question, or if you can repeat it just so I...
Yes. So what strategies do you guys use to remain true to your Islamic principles?
Exactly. So these three, I always ask myself, because it's very, very easy to, get swayed by your own nafs, your own desires, your own sense of like, this is what I would love to do, this is what I want to do instead, especially when you're in the environment that also pushes it, facilitates it, and tells you to do things that are against your principles, right? So for me, these three questions have really allowed me to have a very balanced approach to whenever I start something or whenever I'm getting involved with anything. And it's a lot of work, I know. Like, a lot of people, like, you think all the time you're doing. And I'm like, honestly, yeah, because that's what it means to be a Muslim. Like Fareeda said, we want to be the best. We want to do good. Like, when we're at an interview, when that guy reaches out to shake my hand, I could even think, oh, that'll get me the job. If I don't, maybe it won't. Or I could think, if I don't do it, Allah will be pleased. That could still also get me the job, right? So I remember I used to use those thoughts in my head, and I still do whenever, like, any type of situation that I was in, because it really just allows you to self-check, because you can't always trust yourself. You have to keep yourself in a disciplined form that, hey, like, in this environment, is it the right thing for me to do? I remember there was a time where, so alhamdulillah, I must say, we came from a very segregated environment, and then you go to the workplace, and it's very mixed. But mashallah, this is not to say people don't have bad intentions, but that's how workplaces are. So I was like, okay, if I'm currently sitting in this gathering, let's say there's brothers here, sisters here, what is my intention? Is Allah truly happy with it? So you really just have to self-check, because your mind develops over time. It gets used to things. It gets things are so normalized now, right? Even that idea of posting on social media, the beauty, all of this and all of that. So for me, these questions really help me go through. So asking yourself, is Allah happy with what I'm doing? Would the Prophet ﷺ do it? And what would he say if he was here? So that's sort of the strategies I've used so far. Alhamdulillah, to help me get by. And one more thing I wanted to just touch up on what Fareeda was saying, mashallah, was the idea of the whole thing about, you want to be good as a Muslim because people perceive, Muslim as such and such, right? That is part of Islam as well. Like, having the best character in front of other people. I feel like there's this movement right now where it's like, let me be however I want to be. Let me react the way I want to react. And we're in this era where it's like everything we do is okay. But we don't realize that is taking away the idea of discipline, right? That, no, like in certain situations you have to react a certain way. In certain interactions, you have to be respectful. You have to react, in a very specific manner to each situation. And I feel like as Muslims, we forget often that the beauty of being a Muslim is that we have to carry ourselves the best way. And I'm sorry, but unfortunately, I've been hearing this a lot, but we look at the non-Muslims a lot as the best example.
Yeah.
And when it was the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the golden age, the golden era of Muslim, what was it? They looked at the Muslims as the best example. And like she said, we need to strive in excellence. This whole dunya is so temporary, right? It's not meant to be like, oh, I'm gonna do whatever I want and let me do me and all of that, right? Exactly. And no, it's a very disciplined lifestyle where we want to be the best example. We want to strive in excellence because we want to leave a mark that the reason why we're Muslim is because of Islam. And then this also is a way of dawah, right? A lot of converts and reverts that I've spoken to convert to Islam due to character, due to the actions, right? And I think we Muslims need to really revisit that and find strategies, like you said, that keep us very grounded using our Islamic principles, because Islam is a lifestyle. It's not like it's not just on the side when you pick and choose what we want.
It's more than just reading about Islam.
Exactly.
Islam is very practical. You apply it.
It's practical. I do feel like there is, and I don't mean to be controversial here, but I feel like there's a lot of knowledge out there, mashallah. A lot. I go to massages, there's hundreds of people there. Mashallah, which is amazing. And may it impact everybody in the most beautiful ways. But I feel like people get the knowledge, but unfortunately, personally, I'm not seeing it through action. Everyone knows, but it's so scary because sometimes I don't see it. And only very few places I personally find places where I get to see it. But it's like we won't ever have an excuse to Allah. We won't be able to say, "Oh, but I didn't know," because now knowledge is pretty abundant. You can find it anywhere. So, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, and I can also add on to what Sarah touched on about staying grounded with your Islamic principles when it comes to advocacy and activism. I would say for me, advocacy in Islam is something that's really aligned because in Islam we're called upon to stand up for justice even against our own selves, even against our loved ones and other people. So that's something that's already there. It's just that we have to make sure that whatever we're advocating for is aligned with our religion and isn't something that would, kind of Sarah touched on, earn the displeasure of Allah or earn the displeasure of the Prophet Muhammad. So really ensuring that when it comes to advocacy, that you're advocating for things that you know is aligned with Islam, really, is what I would say. And there's so many ways to advocacy, right? There's not one single way to be an activist. So if there's certain things within something that you're advocating for that isn't Islamic, find another way. There's so many other ways that you can call for something or advocate for something that shouldn't compromise your faith and your religion. Because as Muslims, Islam comes first above everything, right? So yeah, that's something I would say that's really important. And always tying it back to your intentions. Like, why are you advocating for this thing that you're advocating for? What is your main purpose? What is your goal in this thing? And it's always, going to be bigger than just what you're trying to do. It should be for the bigger cause, right? Another thing that I would want to touch on is there's this book that I actually read during COVID, and especially I think a lot when the whole Black Lives Matter was really popular. There was this book that I read called Towards Sacred Activism by Shaykh and Walid, and it was really just a very good read on practical advice to Muslims in the West and how to approach activism from an Islamic perspective. Because that's something that we often don't really like. Should I advocate for this thing? Should I not advocate for this thing? Right? Like, there's ways to go about it, right? And that book was actually really helpful in giving that guideline because, again, advocacy is part of our religion. It's just the way we do it and the way we choose to do it. The places that we're advocating in, the things that we are doing, the things that we are saying is something that we really need to be mindful of. And I guess if I can share some advice to people who are, interested in going about advocacy and how they can start, on that path, is that it's not something that's too out of reach for anybody. You know, we're all activists in different ways and different forms for whatever we believe in. And that's the first step, identifying your passion and what you're passionate about and what you want to advocate for. And going back to that intention aspect of it, like why do you want to advocate for that thing? Another step I would say is finding people, spaces, and organizations that are already advocating for those things so that you're not starting from scratch. You don't need to reinvent the wheel because they already, you know, people who are already doing those things. You just need to join it and make it much bigger because they have the resources, capacity, manpower, everything, right? And an organization that, if I can, plug, is the National Canadian Council of Muslims, NCCM. They're doing amazing work from an advocacy perspective for Muslims in Canada. And, you can join them. You can volunteer. They're always looking for volunteers, people to join their team and help out. And that's something that you can do if you really feel like you want to start somewhere, but you don't want to do it by yourself. Because it doesn't have to be a lonely journey, right? Like it's something that you can do with other people. And if it's not an organization that you want to join per se, you can even start with your own circle of friends. You can have like an Instagram page or, a Facebook page. If Facebook is still being used, anything really like on social media to start advocating and promoting for the things that you believe in, but just having that support with you because, burnout is so real. And it's really important to find people who can support you through that journey and then renew your intention throughout it as well. Because when things get really hard and it gets really difficult to continue advocating for something and continue to do the things that you're doing, having that intention at the back of your mind will help keep you grounded because you're like, I'm doing it because of this. Yes. It's not because of me. It's not because of that person or that person. It's because of this. And that intention will always be tied back to Allah as well. Yes. Like it's Allah who is, I'm ultimately trying to do this for that I'm ultimately trying to please. So yeah, advocacy and activism is a really important thing in Islam, but it's just doing it the right way according to that blueprint again that we already have laid out for us.
Mm-hmm. And in Surah Al-Imran, Allah does tell us, encourage what is good and forbid what is evil. So, وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. So that is something that Allah does tell us. And now moving along to representations. Why do you guys think that it is important for Muslims, especially living in Canada, to be represented in various fields like social media, politics, education?
So I would say representation is very important, but we first have to ask ourselves, why do we want representation? Like, what's the reasoning behind it? Because you don't want to be tokenized. Like, that is so far, long ago. We're in 2024. Tokenism is not something that we should be, getting into. And it's representation, not for representation's sake. It's for actual meaningful representation so that we can make meaningful impacts and change. And so that's what I would first start off with. Like, why do we even want to be represented in that space? What are we trying to do with that representation? And then another thing I would say that's really important is I actually attended this summit in Ottawa last month, organized by the Canadian Muslim Vote. And they're essentially focused on increasing civic engagement within the Muslim community and ensuring that people are getting out to vote, getting out to engage within politics. And one of the speakers who attended the event had actually kind of said this point towards the end of his talk, where he said this quote, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." And we all laughed because it was so funny in that moment. But when I thought about it, it was really like profound what he said, because essentially what it means is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu where things are being talked about. You're one of the discussion points. You're on the agenda, but you're not there to talk about it yourself. You're not there to advocate and speak on behalf of those things that are on the agenda that's relating to you. A lot of the times, it will be there, but it's not being talked about in a way that's beneficial to you. So that's why representation is really important, but appropriate representation as well. Because you don't want to be represented in ways that, misconstrues the identity of Islam and identity of Muslims. We want accurate representation that actually shows who we are. And that's why it's really important that we show up to these spaces with our whole selves. We're not compromising just because we want to be represented. We want to be represented so that we're able to advocate and push for our own causes and our own needs, but in a meaningful way that, again, doesn't make us feel like we have to compromise our faith just to be represented.
Do you think I could add on to that topic? I wanted to just add on to that because I just remembered something my dad would always tell us. He was like, we're in a non-Muslim country, and Allah's gonna ask us like, why are we here in a non-Muslim country? And since we are here, we have a duty upon spreading Islam, doing dawah, getting involved, because like as Muslims, like you said, we if we're not there, they're gonna speak for us, and those people usually have no clue what to say, right? As Muslims, the biggest thing that is within like our religion is the idea of justice, is the idea of advocacy, right? Islam is meant to be spread. It's not meant to be hidden just within your heart. The whole point of being a Muslim is first you practice it, you implement it, and then you spread it. And so that was just something I wanted to share because my dad would always say it all the time. Like, okay, I understand. But the older I got, I was like, no, if I'm going to live here in a non Muslim country, I better be spreading my voice. I better be a representation for our religion for the sake of Allah, right? Because at the end of the day, if we're not going to do anything, what makes us any better? What makes us any better than any other average person? Again, like we've spoken about, we have to be the best. We have to represent, and we have to be the voices in many situations because the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was always about justice. But I don't see us running first, unfortunately. Alhamdulillah, like you said, there's NCCM and there's so many Muslims out there, but we're still like the runner uppers. We're getting there. But there are certain voices and certain movements that we should be involved in. And like you said, whatever matters to you, guided by our Islamic principle and our values. And at the end of the day, if we are here at a non Muslim country, then we need to really make our voices be heard, and we can't just live the luxury life. We need to really use the knowledge that we get to have that not many people get to have. We get halakas like every day now in Masaga, in the GTA. Like that is not something that many people get to have. So many people would say, "Oh, you're so lucky you live in Masaga," and here sometimes we're complaining, "Oh, this, oh that," but we have so many resources, and it would be a shame to not utilize it and to just hide and sit back because what are we scared for? And especially when the Palestine cause on October 7th, when people were, protesting and everything like that, I saw two types of people that were genuinely wanted to go, and people that were just taking videos to post on their Instagram and get views, unfortunately. And it became like a clout chasing, but also there was those genuine people. And again, like she said, why are you doing it? What is your reason? You have to connect it and tie it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in general, justice is Islam. Justice is always Islam, and Islam is a very, very fair religion. And when we actually study our Sharia law and taking that class right now, it's actually very fair. Subhanallah. And I honestly feel like we Muslims need to stand up more into situations, into issues that are very prevalent in the community and not be afraid. That's one thing. We shouldn't be afraid, right? So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
And we even know from qualitative research the power of narratives and using that as data.
Yes.
And using that to understand our world, understand policies,
Yes.
to build policies.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more impactful for Muslims to speak for themselves.
Yes.
And not have others speak for them.
100%.
I did want to ask you guys, are there any Muslim women leaders or scholars, historical or contemporary, that inspired you in your journeys?
I guess I'll go. My all time woman inspiration, and I used to say this when I was a little girl, has always been Khadija radiallahu anha. And I truly, truly, like, sometimes I think back, I was like, wow, like, I genuinely did love her because I would say the name all the time when I was younger. And what I really loved about her, because there's many different types of women, by the way. Like some love, being out there doing this and that. Some love different type of priorities. I was a girl who would dream about, I'm gonna change the world, bring peace, but without violence. I want to bring peace. And I remember I would just sit at recess imagining me doing that. Um, and I'm like, wow. I think about myself at that age. I was so naive and very young. But the woman that truly inspired me was Khadija radiallahu anha, and it was her strength. But it was like she was such a feminine, strong woman. She knew what she wanted, she knew how to do it, and she also knew her priorities. Now, I feel like the idea of strong woman in the Western is very different than what Islam says. That's another topic, but it is very different. As someone who used to be on that side, but Khadija radiallahu anha, she just truly captivated me of how she was a mother, an excellent wife, but she knew what she needed and she knew what she wanted, and she didn't let herself settle in a way, but she also knew her priorities. And she just, through her character, you can tell how much she loved Allah and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how she comforted him, how she was there for him and supported him. And along with that, Dr. Haifa Yunus is my other inspiration. I love that woman. Alhamdulillah. I think we had her at MSA. I think it was during our year. I could be wrong, but she came online. All I remember is that. And this is what she said, and I loved it. She's like, listen, I'm a grandma. I have kids who have kids. I'm a doctor. I study scholarship, and she's like, and I'm a woman, and I was able to do all that. Who says you can't do it? And I was just there like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. um, I'm so inspired by the idea of being a very powerful feminine woman. I just love the idea of following your goals and dreams aligned by what Allah wills, and also knowing your priorities. Another one I'll tell you is that I truly also really love Dr. Rani Awad. She is so beautiful. And I was invited to this Muslim woman leadership thing at this place, and I went and she was talking. And she told us this. She like, ladies. She was talking to the married woman, but she like, ladies who have kids and husbands. She's like, I'll tell you one thing. She loves doing so many things. And alhamdulillah, she was telling how her husband very supportive and kids and all of that, but she did make sacrifices for her family. And in return, Allah rewarded her better opportunities. And I feel like I used to get lost in the thought of like, no, these are my dreams, I have to achieve it. But I used to forget that no, all these women have sacrificed for the sake of Allah, and that's why they're here today. So that's why I loved Khadija radiallahu anha, just how she was so strong. And I think all the women of Jannah are so inspirational. But it was through her that honestly I started wearing hijab, and why I had these like big dreams of conquering the world and making it all Islamic and everything. And I truly think that as women, we don't have to be masculine to do it. We can be as women how Allah has created us. And those that have big achievements, go for it. And don't think that you can't do it. Because like women, like the way Allah describes us is so beautiful. Like we have the luxury of, any time I would read is like, protect the woman, take care of the woman, be the best to your wives. I read those more often than the opposite. And it just showed how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so many opportunities to do khair. And if you are a woman who's like me or you, who love getting involved in the community and yourself, and we love being, role models and activists and want to do all of this work, do it
for the sake of Allah, but know your priorities, and indeed Allah will always open the doors. And that's what those role models showed me. And it's hard at times, but I absolutely love them, and I can't wait to meet Khadija radiallahu one day, inshallah. That'd be beautiful.
First that I would name was Ustadha Yasmin Mogahed.
Yes.
Because she was one of the first like Muslim scholars I ever knew, Muslim female scholars that I ever knew of growing up. And how I was introduced to her was through my mom. Like my mom used to buy her books. You know, Reclaim Your Heart was one of the first books of hers that I read. And I didn't wasn't going through a lot during that time to pick up that book because you know it's a really deep, spiritual, and moving book. But I picked it up because I love reading and I really love the way she writes. And I love the way she pieces psychology and Islam to really practical, digestible manner that you can see this is this issue that I'm facing, this is the solution, how do I get there? Like what's the bridge in the middle? And she does a really great job of doing that. So I really love her as a speaker for that. I really look up to her for that as well. And even I recently finished her book, Healing the Emptiness, which I totally recommend. I don't know if you guys have read it. It's also just a really beautiful book on, you know, going through life struggles and challenges and difficulties. And even if you're not going through those things, having that knowledge of how to approach it when you might go through it is really impactful. And it really equips you with that knowledge and understanding. Another person I'll also mention is Ustadha Time. So I first knew of her from Yaqeen Institute. And she's like one of the first Black Muslim female scholars that I've ever known of. And what I really look up to her for is the way she speaks. She's very confident. She's very eloquent, and she carries herself with such poise and grace that when she speaks, you have to literally sit up and pay attention. And it's just she just captivates you essentially with her talks and her speeches that she delivers. And obviously we can learn from anybody. But I would say for me, being Black Muslim, seeing another person in that space, it's like, oh, I can do something like that too. And going back to that aspect of representation, why it's really important to see ourselves in those spaces, because then you feel like that's attainable for me too, right? So I would say those are from a scholar perspective, those are the people that I would that I look up to. And as well, I do want to plug podcasts because we're on one first of all, and I love podcasts, but one of the ones that I first started listening to during COVID was called Honesty Talks. I think you've probably heard of them as well. They're this, kind of group of Muslim sisters, and they talk on lots of different topics. And that has also really inspired me on my journey in terms of really understanding how to approach, things as a Muslim woman, how to look at certain topics in Islam that impact and influence us. And I really love, the way that they're able to break down these topics in a very relatable format, but also still Islamic. It's like they're not, saying things that you should do that doesn't align with Islam. And of course, I can't come on here and not plug the Digital Sisterhood, which I had an opportunity to work with. And I really love the Digital Sisterhood's ability to be able to bring on different people to their podcast, and really the aspect of storytelling. Muslim women being able to tell their stories. General people like us, right? They're not scholars. Some of them are not scholars. Some of them are scholars. But general people like us who go through life struggles, seeing how other people approach it in a different way is really inspiring. Because it's like, oh, this person's challenged with this thing that I was challenged with, or that I'm currently being challenged with, and this is how they're approaching it. This is how they're dealing with it. It gives you that inspiration of oh, you know what? I should do that as well. This is something that I want to add to my life. And the Digital Sister really does a great job of being able to tell stories and, ensure that we're being represented in the best way possible. And so I'd say, those scholars and these podcasts have really helped me on my journey in terms of really understanding my faith and connecting to it on a deeper level, especially as a Muslim woman as well.
Those programs I used to hold called Honesty Talks. It was actually because of Honesty Talks, that YouTube video, because it was during COVID. They were very up there, and I totally forgot about them. You're right. They're such beautiful women. I absolutely had such a beautiful time listening to them, and I think I binge watched all of their episodes. And I also highly recommend everybody going there. But that actually inspired me to host those halakas, which I will change the name because it is theirs and I want to respect it. But like Farida says, having these representations allows you to get inspired and be like, you know what, maybe this is something I can do. And I found that so beautiful. And I would also love to, I think about, I would love to be that for others too. If That's why it was so hard for me to find a Muslim scholar or anybody, like a female one. I was like, you know what? I find that our generation are the next leaders, and I make dua if Allah wills for us to be that representation for all the younger generations coming. I mean,
And I wanted to even add on to what you said too about like how, we're able to look at these people who are running these podcasts, even though they're not scholars of Islam, they're not like these big, teachers.
yeah,
The fact that like kind of what you mentioned in your earlier point about leadership, like you don't have to be a scholar to be able to have influence. You don't have to
yeah,
be a scholar to be able to, spread, the message of Islam or, share a good word, because that's what these women are doing. They're sharing a good word. Right? So I feel like that's something we always have to keep in the back of our mind, that we're still able to have impact in certain ways, even if it's not at a very high leadership position, but just doing what we do and doing it best.
yes,
So subhanAllah, you guys have shared a very noble and inspirational Islamic figures that we as Muslim people can look up to, as Muslim women we can look up to. Now I want to ask you a little bit about Islamic history. So reflecting on yourselves, how is your understanding or appreciation of Islamic history deepened your personal identity as a Muslim?
a lot, a lot has. But I kind of wanted to focus on this specific part because it kind of really just shaped who I was. And I want to, because we are at a university environment, I'm going to bring in like a little bit of education aspect of our history. I feel like we are in a generation where reading books, seeking knowledge is kind of like it's not really there anymore. Nobody goes to the library. It's more like, okay, 30-second reels, 20-second reels. And I was so inspired by the golden age of Islam. Like, I was like, whoa. You're telling me by the age of 15 they knew chemistry? By the age of 16 they knew this or that? I was like, how? How is that possible? And on top of that, they only did it for the sake of Allah. What I loved about, and this is a person that I'll talk about, is like the people that were educated and knowledgeable, but for the sake of Allah, and they had both the deen and dunya in their minds. They were so knowledgeable with both. They were rich in knowledge, not rich in money. Because I feel like we're in that, we're headed towards, oh, we need to make a lot of money, we need to become millionaires, forget about degrees, forget about universities. What's the fastest way you could be a millionaire? That's unfortunately what I'm seeing and what I've heard the young generation mainly talk about. But Muslims are so rich in knowledge. They have so much vast knowledge of both the religion and the dunya aspect, the sciences, the maths, all of it. And the reason being is that being a Muslim and having knowledge allows you to navigate the world in a very beautiful way. Talking to people, discussing things, doing dawah also, it comes in really handy. And that is the reason why I just loved education and why I'm a nerd, as people like to call it. Because I was like, they were able to do so much at that young age. And I want to be like them. I always had that in me, that I feel like they were the leaders of sciences, the fathers of so many discoveries. When was the last time we Muslim discovered anything right now? Nothing. We haven't done anything. Like, yes, we'll publish an article, yay. But I just feel like I'm talking more of like academic standpoint. Where are the Muslim professors? I barely knew. And the ones that I did, they weren't practicing, right? Because, yes, I don't know if this is controversial, but it's not. It's a basic fact where university it takes away religion and everything, right? But in Islam, we learn religion with all of the sciences and the academics and everything like that. So I feel like we just see more people in the academia field where they do education out of love. Like, you know, that word that was given to the Prophet ﷺ when Angel Jibreel came was Iqra, read. And that's what they did back then, and I just don't feel like it's done enough now, especially with the newer generation. It kind of scares me. But I genuinely, that made me want to be where I am today, to be someone who's rich in knowledge and also, inshallah, applies it. But I genuinely feel like as Muslims, we used to strive in excellence in all of the fields, and we're kind of, I don't know. I don't see the like. This is what I see. Either it's the deen or either it's the dunya. Either it's, you become a scholar and that's it, or you're just working 9 to 5 and you're just hidden. And I feel like Muslims are unique. We have goals, we have aspirations, we have this drive to strive for the excellence and the golden age of Islam. And I always recommend people to look into it. Ties that really well of how we were back then. So I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah. Like,
Yeah, I can touch on it as well a little bit. I would say like it's really important, like you mentioned, to be equipped with Islamic history for our identity as Muslims, so that we know how to navigate the world. And I would say in particular for me as a Black Muslim, kind of understanding history and Black history within Islam was really important for me. And again, going back to that COVID period of time, that's when a lot of this introspection and identity crisis and all this stuff started coming out, and really just kind of trying to understand my place within Islam, because we all have a place within Islam.
Yeah.
But then from a contemporary perspective, you're sometimes made to feel as a Black Muslim that like you're different, you're an other, you're less than, all that kind of stuff. And really having that understanding of Black Muslims within Islam was really monumental for me. And it really helped to shape my personal identity as a Black Muslim. And one of the resources that really helped with this was a book that I read by Shaykh Mustafa Briggs called Beyond Bilal. A lot of people might have read it, might have listened to his talk and heard him speak on it. And it's just a really impactful kind of work of art, really, that kind of goes into a lot of detail about the history of Black Muslims within the Prophet's time, even before the Prophet, even in the Quran, in the Sunnah, like so much that we don't know of, and something that I really encourage a lot of people to, kind of look into and read a bit more on. Another book I also read was by Sheikh Dawud Walid called Blackness in Islam. That was something that also really helped deepen my understanding of Black history within Islam and, connecting my personal identity as a Black Muslim as well. And finally, I'd also like to touch on the fact that even within Canada, Muslims have a lot of history. Like even for this project I was working on, Islamic History Month, I was looking into a bit of research on the history of Muslims within Canada, the first Muslims in Canada. One of them was like a revert couple from Scotland, and then the other was actually from West Africa originally, but he was enslaved in Brazil. And he had made his way to Canada, and kind of the contributions that he also made to Canadian literature. Like looking into that, that was also all before the founding of Canada itself. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. Like Muslims were here before Canada was even Canada.
I didn't know
what I
that.
mean? And it's like we don't. Sometimes people might try to make Muslims feel as though we don't belong in Canada or like we're different.
Yeah.
Like we should just be,
Other.
We're others, right? Like we don't belong. When it's like, no, we've been here and we've made contributions to this country in so many beautiful, wonderful ways.
Oh, wow.
And we need to learn that so that nobody else can make us feel as though we don't belong in Canada and even within our religion as well.
I need to take a class with you now.
Actually, on the point of Islamic History Month in Canada, maybe you could tell us a little bit more on how we can use that month to educate not only Muslims but the broader community about Islam's contributions and values.
Yeah, for sure. I would say Islamic History Month is really important,
Yes.
but our, kind of educating non-Muslims, it shouldn't start in Islamic History Month and it shouldn't stop in Islamic History Month. It needs to go beyond that. And what I would really say is important is for us to also be equipped with that knowledge that we were talking about, right? Like having that understanding of Islam so that when you're asked a question, you know how to answer. We might think like all these things we do are very basic, like praying and fasting, but when someone asks you like, why do you pray? I get why Allah tells you to pray, but why do you pray? Why do you actually answer to that call? There's a reasoning behind that. And for us to all be able to understand that and then be able to articulate that to someone else when we're asked is really important. Right? So I'll say Islamic History Month is a really great way to capitalize on that opportunity to educate non-Muslims and start with your small circles. Start with your non-Muslim friends, your non-Muslim professors, your neighbors, your, in your workplaces. Really start to, try to educate people, but not from the perspective of like you're forcing Islam down their throat. More so just sharing and normalizing your practices, like being, oh, I need to go, instead of saying I need to go to this place to go do something, it's just I need to go pray for 10 minutes, right? Like actually being confident enough to explain your practices is a really great way to educate people, because that sparks conversation. Oh, you pray at this time of day? Like, why? Like, what's the reasoning behind it? And then going back to that understanding, you need to know why. Because someone is going to ask you why. Right? So Islamic History Month is really important, but we also need to educate ourselves on our history as Muslims and Islam in general, so that we're able to spread the message of Islam in an appropriate way. So yeah, that's what I would say about Islamic History Month.
Jazakallah khair. And finally, what role do you guys think media plays in shaping our perceptions about Islam, and how can Muslims more effectively tell their own stories?
Do you want to go, Shaykh?
Sure.
Okay. Go.
Media plays such a big role. Unfortunately, the media tries to paint Islam in a negative light, paint Muslims in a negative light with a lot of misconceptions and just, ways that don't show who we actually are. And it's really important that we're able to, going back to the representation discussion, that we're able to get into these spaces in an appropriate way to be able to advocate for who we actually are and what we believe in. So media plays such a huge role, but we also have to take control of that narrative of the media. Like we have to be able to tell our own story. So I'd say it's really important to find what you're good at doing and doing it well. Whether that's good at podcasting or it's good at, you're good at YouTube, or you're good at Instagram Reels, whatever it is that you're able to expand your audience to non-Muslims as well, so that they're also able to see who Muslims truly are in a more natural setting. Right? Because that's something that's really important, that people need to see who we are on full display. We need to be our full selves, and then for people to appreciate that, they might be intimidated, they might not understand it, but they will respect it. And they will be like, this is this person, they have these boundaries, this is how they practice their faith and their religion. I don't agree, but I'm going to respect it because of the way they're portraying it. And again, going back to that aspect of doing things with exam, and really making sure that we're putting our best foot forward with everything. And storytelling is huge, right? Like storytelling in the media is huge. Again, if I can talk about the Digital Sisterhood, the host and the founder, Ada, was able to go on US daytime TV. She was the first Muslim Naqabi on US TV show. Like, that's huge. They didn't ask a non-hijabi. They didn't ask a hijabi. They asked a Naqabi. How often do you say Naqabi in the media?
Literally never.
With the misconceptions they have about Naqabis, they still invited one on because of the way she was able to portray Muslims in such a beautiful light. Islamic community, sisterhood. She was able to portray that. And that's huge. We need to be our full selves. We can't be hiding and trying to, just make ourselves known just because we want to fit in. Be your full self. They will see that. They will respect it. And they'll give you those opportunities to be able to tell your own stories. Or you tell your own stories yourself. You don't need to be. Do your own thing.
When we respect ourselves, others do respect us.
100%.
Exactly.
And did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it a little twist. What Fareeda says is 100% accurate, and I can't even say it any better. As someone who is on social media, I don't even know what I call myself, but who is on social media, I post here and there, but I'm gonna take it on a different lens. I have witnessed a lot of Islamic content that it has been incorrect. So I'm gonna talk about people being careful with how they also spread Islam, meaning that there's a lot of these motivational signs that, oh, Allah has sent you this, and hadith that this and that. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, I've never heard of this hadith, and I'll go check it, and it doesn't exist, And I feel like those who are spreading Islam need to be very, very mindful of what they spread, meaning the hadith and the Quranic ayahs and stuff, because these are Allah's words, right? These are the Prophet ﷺ saying that I feel like, I've seen a discrepancy in a way that social media, like, she spoke about the beautiful aspect of it, but I feel like we're not talking about the negative aspect of how, unfortunately, everybody can talk about Islam with what they think is right. They normalize what they think is correct, right? They will, kind of spread what they feel like the fiqh is, the fatwa is, how things should be, how they shouldn't be. When I personally feel like there's certain topics that the experts are better at talking about. And there's certain reflections that I feel like we all can discuss about. But unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people used to come up to me and be like, "Oh, but like in this reel, I said that this will happen," and I said, "That's actually not true." And they're like, "Really?" And it scares me because I'm sure those people who are posting it have good intentions, but they don't realize that these people are like, they are majority are they're what, they're only 19, they're 20, and they're young, and they, not to say at that age it's like you're immature, there's so many mature people as well, but they're still learning and they're still growing, unless you have, mashallah, that scholarship right there. But you need to be wise about what you post and what you are spreading, because people look up to you. All of these mentors, influencers, content creators, people look up to them, and those are, it's for them. They're the Islamic mentors, right? So if anything is said, they're held accountable, and I feel for them because I'm like, sometimes I'll see stuff and I'm like, that's not true. Like, don't just be careful and be mindful. So I think social media is great in that way, but it's also scary in another way, because now anybody can talk about Islam. Anybody could be like, yeah, I'm a scholar. But what are your credentials? What did you do? Where did you study? And I remember this one time I asked someone, because I was seeking a mentor, and they got really offended. I was like, I'm just asking where you study from. I'm not doubting, but it's my duty. If I want to mentor, I want to seek and learn from you. I want to know where you studied from, right? So I think that there's this other idea of social media where, they paint Islam in different lights, and it confuses a lot of people. There was one time I knew a sister. She was talking about the Baruj, because it was going everywhere. There was the podcasts that was going everywhere. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but that were really talking down upon sisters. They're just like putting them down. Oh, women this, women that, women are this, women in Islam have to do this. Very aggressive way. And I just want to ask, who are you? Who are you to say these kind of stuff? So it's like social media is a great platform to allow the voices that should be heard. But unfortunately, there are those people that honestly should not be talking and need to not speak, because even the Prophet ﷺ, he was very wise about when he gave his reminders, how he gave it, what he did. And it wasn't like every day it would be like, what is this, what is that, why are you wearing your hijab this way or abaya this way. It was never like that. There's beautiful ways to go about it, and I think social media, unfortunately, just allows anybody to talk, of course, because it's a platform. You can do whatever you want to do, but
In terms of Islamic knowledge,
Islamic
it's a
knowledge,
different field.
exactly, and it's a very sacred thing, you know. So
I think this is also the same thing with any kind of knowledge.
exactly,
Knowing what you're going to talk about, making sure it's qualified knowledge, it's authentic knowledge.
exactly,
So this could be even in chemistry or physics,
yeah.
but we're talking about
A
Islam.
100%, exactly. So as like viewers who are taking this, we need to be critical, and we need to be wise about like who we follow, what knowledge we're taking, and making sure that we don't just believe everything, because don't forget, social media is also for, I want to get followers. It's a very business platform. That's what I want to say. It's very businessy, and just based off of experience, Just be wise. That's all I will say. But that is what Farida says is a beautiful way of the positive outlook of social media. Yeah.
Those were very two different perspectives, but very good perspectives in answering that question. I feel like they both harmonized really well. And so before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to Sister Sarah and Sister Farida
You're welcome.
for sharing
Yes.
your unique experiences and thoughts. Your thoughts on community, participation and personal development and spirituality is quite inspirational. And we appreciate your time for coming today and joining us. And we appreciate also the work that you do in your communities
Thank
and
you.
beyond. Jazakallah khair.
Well,
Thank you to those listening. And I'll end off with a dua. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.